Welcome to Josh's House of Nerd podcast.
Greetings, Nerd Nation. I'm Josh, and I welcome you to the podcast. Grab a cold evergreen goblet of blue milk and make yourself comfortable here at my House of Nerd. Tonight's sponsor is Red Pill Cafe, where we feature the best single-cell protein combined with synthetic amino acids, vitamins, and minerals with a sensation and flavor that you're eating runny eggs. The Red Pill Cafe, your favorite place, where every bite will take you to a real world of taste. Not a sponsor.
Hey, nice.
That was pretty good.
You like that?
That was a good one. I do like that.
I'm tempted to go.
I like the effort in it. It's nice.
Thank you. All right, and tonight on today's podcast, we welcome Crit, John, and introducing my brother Jake, who will be on this podcast with us. And last week, the selections came from me, and these guys picked from my three cryptically hidden movies. From the topic of this month, which is the topic of August, is sci-fi movies pre-1990s. And out of the three choices that I cryptically, not so cryptically did, I'll get better next time, we did The Last Starfighter, all right? And which is one of my favorite movies of all time, which is why I threw it in there. Those are the three choices I gave you were three of my top movies all time, minus Aliens. Aliens isn't in there because of reasons. And it's because I was leaving it open for you, Craig. But
Appreciate it.
So let's get started talking about the movie. What did you guys think? I mean, I'm having a feeling that all of us have seen it before.
It's been a while, for sure.
Has it been?
Yeah, I definitely, for some reason, I thought the movie was longer than it felt like. Like, that movie didn't last as long. Like, it got to the climax pretty quick. And but overall, yeah, it's an enjoyable movie. It's pretty well written. It's got really great, I like some of the CGI and stuff like that they put in. Like, the CGI aesthetic is definitely 1984, but I don't know. It's kind of appealing in a way that, some other movies aren't,
You bring up the CGI. I mean, this is the first, and you guys probably, you might notice a statistic, but it is the first movie where all the special effects except for explosions and like makeup were completely CGI.
See,
Yes.
and I made a note on that. I don't know. I kind of wish it wasn't. I kind of wish it wasn't CGI. I wish they were much more practical effects than what they did.
Do you know the story behind why they actually had planned to do it? They were going to do it, and then they actually got into it. And when they started like rendering it, because they had a Cray, one of the biggest supercomputers of all time at that time, they were going to do lots more like renderings of textures and stuff like that. But when they started to see like the time it took to render, and some of these, even though some of these scenes are like very textureless, some of them took days to render. And then if there was a mistake in it, they had to re-render it for days again. It was ridiculous.
No, it just kind of reminded me of like a Star Fox aesthetic. And
Star Fox. I never thought about that.
Super Nintendo Star Fox.
But I kind of like that. I like it. Yeah, it's not bad polygon. Yeah.
What was that, Jake?
I will agree with that too. It definitely has a Star Fox aesthetic to it. It clearly CGI, but given the time, they did the best they could. But it turned out really well too, though.
Agreed.
Yeah, I wasn't rolling my eyes so much. I mean, the starship, the space car Winnebago, with the roll wings, that must have inspired Elon Musk with the Tesla.
I was thinking more Spaceballs at that point. It felt like a scene straight out of Spaceballs. The Winnebago and the crystals that are all the money, and he's wheeling and dealing for them. Like it felt straight out of Spaceballs for a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time hating on this movie. So yeah.
I don't mean to hate on it. It's just I wish they hadn't done CGI. I think the movie would have been that much better if they had gone practical effects
and used models. Gone with like a more Star Wars approach, but if they went with more Star Wars approach, then it would just look like another Star Wars.
Well, and they were trying to get away from that, they were trying to get away from this whole thing of like looking like a Lucas. They knew there were going to be comparisons, but they were trying to get as far as they could away from that, using their own stuff, even though they knew inevitably they were going to be compared to Star Wars.
I don't know how worried they should have been about that, because I think they were focused a little bit differently than Star Wars. Yeah, it's plucky guy from middle of the nowhere becomes the big hero and saves the day, but that's an archetype that's done in a lot of films.
True.
But I feel like The Last Starfighter focused a lot more of its time on character development and less on the action. So I think even if they had looked more like a Star Wars film with regards to the miniatures and to the painting, the painted backdrops, I still think it would have stood out on its own based on all of the character development and the character focus alone.
And I'll have to counter you on that a little bit on if it would have been better. I always thought that, don't get me wrong. There's parts in here that they even describe it. The part where they're in the cave.
Yeah.
They describe it as runny ice cream. And it does. It's pretty bad. And they knew that, and they were going to redo it if they had time to re-render it, but they didn't. But the counter I have to that is that technology. That was the best of that day. And no, it hasn't aged as well, but still, I feel like the reason they went to the lower textures is they knew not only was it time, but they knew that maybe they couldn't do it as well, and it wouldn't look as good long term as keeping it kind of the more basic textures that they did. And I think it kind of gives it a sort of its own personality. It's its own thing. That's, I think, one of the reasons I like this show is because it does have its own feel. It's not a straight up Star Wars knockoff. They were trying to do something that had never been done before. And that's what I think kind of gives it its I'm trying to look for the right word here, but the feel goods on of this movie, what sets it apart.
Yes, for some reason when I see like the CGI and the ships and the detail on like the main ship and stuff like that, well, not just on the main ship, on all the ships, for that CGI, I don't know, it just makes me smile. Like it's I really didn't mind it that much, which is kind of surprising. But, when I was watching it again, I was like, I'm really enjoying these things. And I don't know if another hardcore, miniature setup would have made me enjoy it more. Maybe, I don't know, because I haven't seen that movie, but I don't know if it would have made me enjoy it more. So I'm kind of with Josh on this one.
That's fair.
I would agree with that. Yeah, that is fair.
I don't feel like it takes. Okay, again, I know that some parts are bad, and it does. There are a few little parts, like the cave scene where they're hiding from the Ko-dan Armada, that looks garbage. But really, on the whole, I think there's scenes in there that, for the technology that they had at that time, actually looks incredible. Especially the parts where they're coming into where he's originally grabs, Lance Guest, from, the trailer park at first, Centauri does, and he takes him. That whole scene of them going through, like, showing all the planets, like, in our solar system and stuff. Yeah, it's clearly a computer-generated model, but it still looked pretty good. They still were doing particle effects that I didn't even know existed at that time, with those planets and stuff.
The superimposed explosions, though, that didn't work for me. That was a pure laugh moment every time they did the actual. So they superimposed the explosions over the CGI, and it's just
and that's pretty bad.
that was pretty.
That was bad. That was bad, probably even for the time. It
was. It looked like it was rushed, but that's okay.
They tried.
Yeah, they did try. So Jacob, what did you think while you were watching it?
Yeah.
This is a movie that is always close to my heart because of Josh. It's a great movie.
It's a good thing to be blamed for.
You know, a movie that, you know, the premise of it is that a guy is really good at playing a video game, you know, and he gets picked to save the universe based on how good his video game skills are.
So like,
and
predicting streamers 30 years ahead of time.
You know, yeah, exactly. It's just, you know, it's a movie that was really good for its time. It's there's obviously room for improvement. There's times where, you know, you can clearly see that it's you know, the Atari age, the ColecoVision age.
Mm-hmm.
And now you compare it to an age of where we are now. Yeah, there's room to grow, but you know, the storyline and everything is awesome. I love it. And yeah, it's just an all around, it's a awesome feel good movie.
So Josh, if they were trying to get away from looking like Star Wars, why did they have the aliens shave the alien humans shave the top of their heads and make them look like, you know, like the what's the Star Wars characters that have like the metallic thing around the back of their head with the bald spot on top? Like, it seemed like a weird aesthetic choice to have the you know what I'm getting at? Like, I'm not explaining it.
I mean, you got one in Star Wars, and then you got Star Trek that has that too. Because Star Trek has it too with the Ferengi. No,
that's not really what I'm talking about. You know, Ferengi look like bats. You know, bat people.
That too.
I'm talking about like the, you know, so there's a couple of characters in, I think it's the one on the Cloud City.
Yeah, Empire Strikes Back. It's the security guy.
Yeah, and he's got the band around the back of his head and stuff like that. And then they have like the same aesthetic choice for the human aliens, having, you know, the men and women have their top of their heads, you know, shaved. Kind of, it was weird. I was like, oh, what? This kind of reminds me of Star Wars. What's going on?
I don't think they were trying to stay away from Star Wars in a sense. They knew that they were going to be compared to Star Wars, and they just, so there was no way they could get it totally away from that, is what my study says.
I do realize I'm asking you like you were there.
Right. But in some of the articles I've read about it over the years, because I've read a lot about this movie, they have had tendency to know that it was going to be everybody's going to look at Star Wars, and even some of the aspects of it, like, you know, with E.T., this is some of the changes they made that are specific. They knew that E.T. was like and even Poltergeist with Steven Spielberg was like there was almost the same neighborhood, you know, a common suburbs in the 80s. So they wanted, the switch they made to that was, that's why we now have a trailer park.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That's smart.
This boy from a trailer park that's in the middle of nowhere now, you know, has nowhere to go, you know, which made it even more desperate with his wanting to find another way.
Yeah. So they had a kind of, that's interesting, because then it's kind of a different take on, maybe not a different take, but just like came at a different angle of class.
Yep.
You know, because like E.T. is, and even Poltergeist are suburbs. These are well-off, well-to-do people.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is the middle of a trailer park. I think it was interesting too that the forces that were keeping him there were different than the forces keeping, let's say, Luke on Tatooine, where he's forced to be there. And in The Last Starfighter, it's his own, you know, yeah, he's not getting into the school he wanted to, but it's also his own goodness of heart in helping out his mom and being there for the people around him that are keeping him there, versus, you know, being stuck and told he can't go anywhere by his mom or those around him. So it was a little bit different, and I think it set him up to be a little bit different of a character than Luke ever was. He was generally less self-centered for the most part. Obviously that changes a little bit when he's asked to die for the world, but, you know, to me, that it set it up to be such a different character. I was really appreciative of that character development over being forced.
And yeah, I agree with that. And at the same time, like you were talking earlier about, like they should do more practical effects. But I thought some of the like costuming and stuff like that was really interesting. Like the first prosthetic top for Beta when he pulled the sheet away, you know, that type of thing. I mean, that was actually really well put together.
I was watching that with my my 4-year-old. I did not realize that scene was there, and
probably freaked him out.
He had a nightmare that night. So
wow.
Just remember that scene's there in the movie.
Well, in Sympathy, when I was a kid and I saw this, the Zandozan,
the hit
beast, scared the crap out of me when I was a kid.
Me too. And I used to watch this show in like reruns, like on TBS at me and Jake's dad's house, and on the weekends, and it would scare the crap out of me every single time, and I loved it.
When he jumps out of the back of the cop,
it's fantastic.
Backseat of the cop car and everything. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I didn't. After the whole Beta unit incident, he was not allowed to keep watching the show. Because I'm like, I wonder how much else I forgot.
Which is fun. I'm kind of glad you didn't, because of the part on the bridge. You know, especially the part where the Ko-dans at the final battle like die.
Their headset pop off, and they got these little beady eyes. And
That's great, man. Yeah. Like I said, I think that's another reason why I like where they put their money for the budget. You know, and that type of thing. I don't know. It probably back then it probably cost equal to do CGI rendering at that level and do practical models instead. But they did a lot of costume work.
I agree with you, Crit. Like, I think that's one of the if they had just done the CGI and everything else was crappy, it wouldn't feel like such a union of the two. But yet, I mean, Greg, that costume and that makeup is, in my opinion, epic. It's really good looking, you know, and a lot of the makeup in this movie is really good. I mean, there's some like weird stuff, like the guy with the tentacles that he steps on, and a couple
of like the no face people that are in the recruits and stuff like that. They kind of repeated a couple of times. Those are look like a lot simpler, you know, setups, but I think they put the detail where they wanted.
No, I agree, and I think that's one of the things that are really likes. Yes, they were trying to expand the technology, but they still did land in they still did go do better things and still expand on, say, costuming and makeup. You know, the makeup artistry of that time, because I mean, you think about the '80s. That's one of the things that was really at a high point at that time, and they're right in the middle of that time. You know, they're right in the middle of the time of John Carpenter's The Thing, where you had all of that, like makeup and things like that.
Yeah, I had real, like it felt like real inspirations on those specific parts from John Carpenter's The Thing, because of the way they did, like just kind of the sweaty liquid nature of when they did close-ups of those prosthetics and stuff like that. It's like, oh man, they really tried. Like they really tried. It was kind of cool.
No, I agree. Go ahead, Jake.
I say, the makeup makes me feel makes me think of V.
Yeah. How so?
It just the reptilian, you know, the makeup, you can definitely tell comes from that time period. You know, you can tell it was definitely writing along those same lines. I look at Greg, and that's what it makes me think of.
No, I would agree with you.
I could see that.
I think you're absolutely right. It did highlight how hard they tried, and they did. I think they tried hard in a lot of different ways. So, for example, the Beta unit, they had not filmed a lot of those scenes, and it wasn't until they showed it to some test audiences that they saw that they really liked what the Beta unit was on screen. They're like, oh, hey, we can throw more of that into the movie.
Well, it's a real fish out of water like moment. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I don't feel like any of the Beta unit's time on the screen was wasted or extraneous, and I'm glad they went back and did that. And to me, that just highlights how much effort went into the movie, because it did. You know, regardless of how I feel about the CGI, you could tell that a lot of people spent a lot of time and effort bringing this idea and vision to the big screen.
Agreed.
You're talking about the Beta unit. I mean, okay, you know, it almost feels like two movies. Like it's cohesive. Don't get me wrong. it is extremely cohesive because they're based off of the same, one person's there, one person's back, and they didn't have to play on that fish out of water part as much. And I'm so glad that they noticed the test audiences were digging that, and they expanded upon that dramatically. As a matter of fact, they found out about that so late in the game that was such a popular thing that Lance Guest went back, and they brought him back for reshoots. And one of the things, if you look in like all the things, they talk about him having to wear a wig because he'd actually already cut his hair for another movie, another famous movie he was in, Halloween 2. He'd already shorn his hair off.
Oh yeah.
And so they brought him back, and not only is he have a wig on, but in almost all those scenes where he is doing beta unit and has that wig on, he's got the flu, and he is pale as all get out, and he's sweating, and you can see that he's actively sweating. He's sweating in real life because he's really sick, really sick in those pickup beta unit scenes, which is kind of which I think is kind of an interesting, like how much they were dedicated to doing this movie, and yet that's some of my favorite parts of the movie is those scenes, especially like where they're at the campsite, and he's trying to talk dirty to Catherine Mary Stewart, and I think those scenes are just gold, cheesy but gold. And I like her anyway. I mentioned that we talked about, like, did you guys know that the director of this movie was Michael Myers?
Yeah. Well, I found out after the fact.
Did you? Yeah. He's only in one or two scenes as Michael Myers, but he's that scene. They're pretty sure he's Michael Myers when towards the end of the movie where they're in the closet and then he kind of falls over the balcony.
Okay, for a second, I thought you were telling me the director of the movie was Michael Myers, as Michael Myers, not that he was playing Michael Myers?
No, he played Michael Myers in the original Halloween.
I know, so I was like, wait a second. My research is gone.
Yeah.
My research is out the window, because I have a whole bit on Escape from New York and that whole thing, and I'm like, well, there goes my podcast.
Yeah,
well, and there's
Nick Castle.
Yeah, the director's Nick Castle. And the funny thing about these guys is they have like the tie-in to Halloween. So Lance Guest was one of the stars of Halloween 2, right? Well, Dan Hurley, however you say his name, he's actually one of the big stars in Season of the Witch, Halloween 3. And so it's like there's like huge tie-ins to Halloween, which is also how most of these guys got the job for Last Starfighter, because they're all tied into similar movies.
Makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
I thought that was kind of an interesting kind of piece of trivia there.
And he had a thing for sequels. I mean, Halloween 2, and then he did Jaws: The Revenge.
Lance Guest?
Talking about Lance Guest.
Probably one of the a lot of people don't. It's really funny. That movie actually did pretty good back in the day, but people look back at it now, and it's like, that was a horrible movie.
Well, if you try to watch it now, we'll subject each other to that at some point in time, I'm sure.
Oh, please no. I've seen that movie enough, and I've seen it like twice, and that's enough, man.
That's really enough. There was one thing about this movie that it was kind of stood out to me as like a little bit annoying. And I kind of want to be like, it was like Alex the movie, because they just say Alex and they're yelling Alex constantly throughout the movie all the time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, come on, this is repetition is bad. It's starting to like I'm noticing it out of the movie.
I didn't even notice until you just pointed it out, man.
Yeah, they yell his name constantly, especially at the beginning of the movie.
In the trailer park?
Everybody's just in the trailer park, and even when he's taken to the
Starfighter base.
Yeah, the Starfighter base. I mean, it's just constant, and it's like, okay, man, this kid is put upon by that community. Now, I get it. He's important. He's fixing the things. He's doing the stuff. He's a good boy, but man, they need to lay off him for a little bit.
Well, and I get they're emphasizing that he's needed. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't want you to forget his name.
No.
Yeah,
they were super worried that Alex was a foreign enough name. After
he's a VIP.
Yeah. Well, crap. Even Greg, says his name a lot. When they're
a lot.
Alex, focus. And
I do like Greg's characterization, though. I mean, he had a very unique, kind of just the way he did his little. They could have phoned in like his reactions, but he always they always had like unique reactions with him and stuff like that. And the way he kind of stops back in his chair and was a little lizard-like or turtle-like. I couldn't tell what they were going for really, but yeah.
He's just a good actor. That guy is just everything I've ever seen him in. He just knocks it out of the park. He may not be in like the best movie of all times every time, but you can always tell he's doing the best he can in all the different movies that he's been in.
And for some reason, I always got that character mixed up from my childhood and Enemy Mine.
Well, they're really similar.
They are. They're
really similar. I don't know if you guys have seen Enemy Mine, but that's why can't I think of it's the guy in Iron Eagle that plays that character you're talking about, Enemy Mine.
Yeah. Across from crap. I'll look it up. Keep going.
That's the second time we've mentioned Iron Eagle on this podcast. I think we need to adopt a rule of 3. If we've mentioned a movie at least 3 times on the podcast, we dedicate a future podcast.
No. Well, maybe. Or we constantly reference it and never watch it.
I've seen that movie so many times. I probably don't have to ever watch it again, and I could probably give you plot point by plot point on that movie. And then I'll say, in some parts, enter 80s montage here in that movie. Yeah. There's like multiples of that movie. Oh, why can't I think of his name in that mind?
Louis Gossett.
Louis Gossett Jr.
He's also
across from Dennis Quaid.
Yep.
Oh, he's I love that guy.
Oh yeah, okay.
He plays Chappie. Okay, we're getting off Iron Eagle.
Yeah.
Enemy Mine's a good one though too. I haven't seen that for a long time, but anyway. But yeah, he does have some Enemy Mine, characteristics. Definitely kind of reptilian looking and so on. In that sense, that was right around the same time too, which is kind of funny. It's one thing it keeps coming to my mind every time. It keeps going away and then coming back because it's something that I don't know. It inspires me every time I see this movie, and it's one of the things that probably endears me to this movie the most. Well, not the most, but one of the reasons. And it's the music. The music of this movie. A lot of people think it's John Williams or whatever, and I don't even know the guy's name on this one. But the actual music on this one, every time I feel it, I get chills even to this day. No matter how many times I've seen this movie, it still gives me chills on how, especially at the very end, where Alex is going up into up into the Gunstar. And then as they fly away and they play the credits music, oh my goodness. So it's even giving me chills right now. I love that entire soundtrack of The Last Starfighter. It's inspiring to me, and I think it's a companion to the rest of the movie. I don't think it would be as good if it wasn't for the music of this movie. Kind of like a Battlestar Galactica in that way.
The music helps, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of hero horns and
there is
kind of typical, I would say, for us now. Maybe not necessarily then. I'm not sure.
No, it definitely wasn't as common. Like you had your Battlestar Galacticas and your Star Warses.
Well, it was definitely,
but it was still fairly new at that time. It
was definitely anti-synth. Like there's no synthesizers. It's really like orchestral and which is interesting for that type of movie.
Well, and it's a stark contrast to the Flash Gordon we watched last week. That was all
seriously.
That was completely synth. So
I wasn't part of that, and I would totally agree.
Jake, you're not missing out on anything. Trust me. With see, I mean, I'm glad I saw it. I can say that I saw it all the way through now, but you're definitely not missing anything on Flash Gordon and stuff.
That's great.
But you know,
John's going to send us death threats later.
Yeah, are we going to die, John?
You ripped on my movie. I'm going to start my own podcast. Blackjack.
What, you ripped on my movie? You've ripped on a couple of my movies. What are you talking about? Ice Pirates. Let's see. Lethal or Loaded Weapon. I mean,
you can't even get started on Loaded Weapon. I missed that one too, and yeah, that's in a league of its own.
Oh yeah, people can have full ripability on that one. One more thing I want to point out, since as we're talking about this, I wanted to just when I was a kid, I just couldn't wait for a scene to happen, and it was the absolute scene, and it happens it's like 2 seconds long, and yet it's the scene that I always wanted. Do you guys know what it is? Can you guess?
When Catherine Stewart first comes on the scene?
Dude, she's so hot, by the way. And I love her. She's in that movie Night of the Comet, too, which me and Jake...
She's in Weekend at Bernie's, man.
What? I did not know that one.
Oh, yeah, she is.
What?
I mean, that's where I recognized her from, not from anything else. I recognized her from Weekend at Bernie's.
I seriously recognized her from... Okay, at the time, it wasn't considered necessarily a B movie, but it's considered now a B movie, Night of the Comet. And that was like the next movie she did after this. And I've seen that movie so many times on USA Up All Night with Rhonda back in the day. Wow, that kind of dates me, huh?
Gilbert Godfrey.
You're dating yourself now too, Jake.
I'm pretty sure Mystery Science Theater did Night of the Comet. They riffed on that one of these times.
Did they?
I think so. If they didn't, they should have.
Oh, I'm not surprised if they did.
to rip on another movie you like. Sorry.
That's a fun B movie.
It is, absolutely.
And stuff.
But yeah, no, she's in Weekend at Bernie's, and so I was suddenly, getting some 90s party vibes coming from Last Starfighter.
I'm gonna have to go watch Weekend at Bernie's now, because I always had a crush on her. I always just thought she was adorable, growing up, and going through my hormonal years of, she's so hot. Anyways. It made me think also, like when they're talking in the movie, when they're talking, some of the scenes, so that one scene where Lewis is listening in on them talking, and do you have any, I know it was just the words that was said at that time, but it just reminds me of that era so much of, like where he says like, oh, crapola, or diarrhea. And
the little kid.
Yeah. And that kid just reminds me of like some of the things I said at that age, because I was probably just a little bit younger than him, not by much.
And I love that the beta unit was threatening to tell his mom about all the Playboys he had under the bed. I'm like, well, that's a weird scene to see. I don't necessarily need to see this scene. That was a little weird.
I was waiting for someone to touch in on the Playboy scene.
Oh, the Playboy scene.
Yeah, we skipped past that one.
Oh, again, that kind of reminds me of my growing up. There was I had a next door neighbor that growing up that always seemed to have, always wanted to try to show me Playboys and stuff that his dad had, and I was just like, So yeah, some of this stuff actually fits in kind of similar in many ways.
We might be getting into dangerous confessional territory. Let's move on.
Again, just so we're aware, we are not a kids show.
Yeah,
that was our disclaimer.
I'm sorry.
Disclaimer. That was our disclaimer.
No kid nowadays knows what Playboy is. Come on, the magazines don't even exist anymore. Really,
that's true.
Playboy, went out of. They stopped producing magazines. Last year? I read it in Reader's Digest.
I don't keep up with it. Okay.
I'm just joking. It was in the news.
You're like, when my subscription finally ended last year.
When my last magazine didn't show up.
Auto renewal didn't trigger.
Yeah, I didn't get my Playboy magazine. I didn't get my Nintendo Power. I didn't. That's how I found out about all of them. Gosh dang.
Nintendo Power. You're dating yourself again.
I know. I was going through them the other day. They smell musty. Anyway. Anyways, as you can see, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. Do you guys have any other things that you guys want to add to this awesome movie? Crit, John, Jake? Do you have anything to add, Jake? You haven't said a ton and stuff. Is there anything that's interested you? Putting you on the spot here. Anything that you want to share with anybody, or are you good to go too?
I'm good to go. I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. So.
That's all right. Not a problem. Good stuff. Well, I guess let's move to our
ratings.
Ratings. What do you guys think of this? What would your ratings be? I'll give mine first, I guess.
Go for it.
I was just looking for it. I was like scrolling down to see what I put. So my rating for this one is 9 out of 10 Death Blossoms and stuff.
Okay.
That's It's I really like this show, and I even own it in three different formats that I like so much: digital, DVD, and Blu-ray.
So when I watch this with my mom in the room, the answer is no, and the reasons why is as soon as Greg would come on screen, I would get an earful about how one of my cousins believes in lizard men and how they're real. So I wouldn't watch it with my mom in the room because I don't feel like getting the family gossip of my cousin who believes in lizard men.
Is that true?
That's absolutely true.
So he very much loves V, is what you're saying?
No, she. It's a she.
Or she, whoever, yes.
Very, very anti-vax, very lizard men, very
all right.
Full on. Yeah.
Sweet, out in the family. Right on, man.
I will give it 7 Zandozans out of 15.
Wow, that's very middle of the road. Jeez. Oh wait, is it?
Yeah, wait, not to take a stance there, Grant.
No, I took a stance. It's literally 7. That's my stance.
Is that because Zandozans are so badass? That's what you're saying? And stuff, and they're powerful.
I think it's a really enjoyable movie. It's not a movie that I'll go back to very often. So
fair enough.
That's why it's basically a little below average for me. But it's only slight. It's like just right there. I love the movie when I watch it, but I'm not like going out
craving it.
Yeah, I'm not going. I'm going to watch that again. That type of thing. That's not really that type of thing.
Understood.
No, fair enough, dude. I get it and stuff. Jake, what was your call on this?
Oh, like I said before, this is a movie that I think it's awesome. It's a great movie for its time. It's close to me because of you. I grew up on this, and I'm gonna get it a 9 out of 10.
All right.
10 stars.
Awesome.
So,
9 out of 10 what? You kind of broke up there.
gun stars.
Gun stars? That's the part I didn't hear. I was like, 9 out of 10. I know he said something else after that. 9 out of 10 gun stars. It's pretty awesome. Gun stars are amazing. I wish I could find a model of a gun star. It would be...
That would be a cool design to have, for sure.
Right?
Like I was thinking that if you had how they do the schematic artwork on like a lot of old like sci-fi stuff, like as a poster or something like that, that'd be a really cool schematic poster to have, I think.
Oh, I agree. When I was younger, I had crap. It just went on my head. Star Fox's ship that I would have. They actually had one where you could put together out of a Nintendo Power, where you could like piece it together and it would like fold it like origami. And I had that hanging from my ceiling.
Cool. Very cool.
So yeah, I would definitely have a gun star hanging from my ceiling if I could do that too. I have always looked for a model of that, but I've never been able to find one. So, anyways.
All right, Crit.
Crit. So, what's your 3 picks you're gonna do? Yeah.
Grace it with your movies.
Okay. I have a. Let's see how best to explain this. It's basically this is going to be kind of hard. but it's definitely kind of alien inspired or adjacent movies to pick from. So the first one is misappropriation of non-terrestrial power.
Okay.
The second one is dangerous interactions with non-terrestrial power. And the third one is dangerous integration of non-terrestrial power.
Is it Marley and Me?
That
How
was
did
gonna
you
be
guess
my
that?
guess. Dang it.
It's actually Iron Eagle.
That was my second guess.
The first one was misappropriation, right?
Yep, misappropriation, and the second
Yeah.
one dangerous interactions, and the third one is dangerous integration.
My vote is for misappropriation, Josh.
Which one was that? One was that first one?
Yeah, it's the first one.
That was what mine was too. Jake, do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I go with number one.
All right.
All right, because I have a feeling I know what number 2 is.
Okay. Dangerous.
So give us
number-
2 and 3 first. Yeah.
I am. Yes, I know the format. Dangerous interactions with non-terrestrial power. That is the Andromeda Strain.
Oh.
Did not guess that one.
Yeah.
Though I do like that show. I like that movie.
1971.
Yeah, that's a good one, dude.
I know. All right, and the next one was dangerous integration of non-terrestrial power. Alien Nation.
Oh! We keep missing this one.
Yes,
We're gonna get it there someday.
Yes, we are.
Oh, please don't say we picked one that I like. It's really common. What did we pick?
Okay. Misappropriation of non-terrestrial power is E.T., the extraterrestrial.
Oh. Great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
I haven't seen this movie in more than a decade.
I've seen this movie exactly once, and I was 8, and I vowed never to watch it again, but I didn't realize I'd be on a podcast with 3 grown men who would recommend watching
E.T. over Alien Nation.
As an adult, I would
Andromeda Strain.
Yeah, as an adult,
Oh,
I'd
my
be surprised
gosh.
if you couldn't find some redeeming things in E.T.
I'll watch it with my 4-year-old. I've got to make sure that there's no
And that's a
crazy
good one.
scenes like melting faces.
There's not.
But-
I've actually watched this not within the
only
last
scary
couple of
part-
years with my
well,
kids.
We'll talk about it, I guess, in the next podcast.
Yeah, there's a couple of borderlines, but anyways. Okay, well, thanks for everybody being here. Jake, thank you for being here. You're always welcome on the podcast. And thank you all, the rest of you all, for being here. This was a fun podcast. And as always, may you be excellent to each other and live long and prosper from all of us at Josh's House of Nerd. Good night.
Thanks for watching.